Hi, I'm Chelsea Nye, and my idea worth spreading to you is not using a cell phone while driving. In the past decade, technology has grown greatly. Every day there are a great number of drivers on the roads. Majority of these drivers are likely cell phone owners. As technology continues to grow, we need to remember our safety. Drivers think they can multitask, but in reality they are endangering themselves and others. In general, our society has picked up great pace and tends to take on too much at a time and tries to multitask. Drivers need to slow down and remember their safety and do one thing at a time. Drive, then use their cell phone after. Many factors go into driving a car and many things could be a distraction. This is why I believe cell phones should not be used. Cell phone usage is one factor drivers can eliminate themselves, but often none do. No one wants to get into an accident or cause one, yet many people put themselves in the position to almost every time they drive a car. Whether it comes down to laws being passed or spreading the word to others, it is important for all drivers to put their cell phones down while driving. Since I was little, driving with cell phones has been bothersome to me. As a teen, riding around with my friends, I have come close to being in many accidents as a result of drivers being distracted by their phones. For me, getting in an accident is not worth that one text message that could have waited 10 minutes until we were out of the car. I value my life greatly and don't want it to end anytime soon. I want to take control of the factors that I can, such as not using a cell phone while driving, to ensure my life. Distractions while driving can be very harmful to the driver, passengers, and other cars. Although cell phones are not the only distraction to drivers, it is the most critical and urgent distraction that needs to be fixed for the safety of all drivers on the roads. When it comes to driving, many things can be a distraction. All distractions can be categorized into three main sections. A visual distraction is when a driver takes their eyes off of the road. A manual distraction is when a driver takes their hands off of the wheel. A cognitive distraction is when a driver takes their mind off what they are doing. A distraction could be any activity that does not include actually driving the car that the driver may engage in. Some types of distractions include cell phones, eating, drinking, talking with passengers, putting on makeup, reading maps, using a GPS, changing the radio, or using an iPod. These are not all the distractions that a driver may face, but are the more common distractions. Less common and obvious forms of distractions can include daydreaming and dealing with emotions. There has been a shift of focus for modern drivers from the road to a multitude of other tasks that can cause accidents. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, 20% of crashes, including injuries, in 2009 involved distracted driving. Also in 2009, Fatality Analysis Reporting System in the National Automotive Sampling reports that 5,474 people were killed and 448,000 people were injured in motor vehicle crashes on the U.S. roadways involving reported distracted drivers. A study by the Center for Cognitive Brain Imaging at Carnegie Mellon University states that brain power used while driving decreases 40% when a driver listens to conversation or music. Even more frightening, more than 80% of drivers admit to blatantly hazardous behavior while driving. Changing clothes, steering with a foot, painting nails, and even shaving, according to a nationwide mutual insurance survey. One of the more prominent and important distractions to driving is cell phones. According to the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, of the people killed in distracted driving related car crashes, 995 included reports of a cell phone distraction. Drivers using handheld devices could be 4 times more likely to get into crashes that are impactful enough to injure them, says the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. The safest course of action while driving is to not use a cell phone. At any given moment during daylight hours, 8% of all drivers are talking on a cell phone, as estimated by the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. Using a cell phone by a driver could include a number of different maneuvers, such as searching for a phone in the vehicle, reaching for a phone to initiate or receive a call, dialing, holding a phone to the ear while talking and driving, picking up a phone that has been dropped, or texting. While a driver is 4 times more likely to get into a crash just using a handheld device, they are 8 times more likely to get into a crash if they are texting on it. This is because texting is a distraction that takes drivers' minds and eyes off the road and their hands off of the wheel. A Virginia Tech study recording drivers found that those involved in a crash had been typically staring at their phones for 5 seconds. At 70 miles per hour, 5 seconds is enough to travel 29 car lengths. Some suggest a hands-free device to replace having to actually hold a cell phone. According to the University of Utah psychologists Strayer and Drews, hands-free cell phones are just as distracting as the handheld phones due to the conversation itself. The study showed drivers talking on a handheld and hands-free phone both drove slightly slower and were 9% slower to hit the brakes. It is not just the manipulation of a cell phone, but the conversation as well. The study shows inattention blindness as a distraction where drivers look directly at the road but don't see anything because they are involved in a conversation that is distracting them. Such drivers would argue that they are not impaired because they are watching the road, but in reality, just because their eyes are looking at the road doesn't mean they are paying attention to it. When a person drives and uses a cell phone, they put others at risk just as they do if they were to drive drunk. The level of impairment between cell phones and alcohol has been studied and compared by the University of Utah psychologists to be very similar. They found that people driving intoxicated at the legal blood alcohol limit of 0.08% are as impaired as a person using a cell phone. Drivers distracted by cell phones or under the influence are found to typically drive slower than undistracted drivers. They are also slower to hit the brake pedal. In a study, a texting driver traveled 25 more feet before stopping, while a drunk driver only traveled 4 more feet at 35 miles per hour. While driving under the influence of alcohol still happens today, it is against the law and happens far less due to awareness. All drivers are informed of what can happen if they drive drunk, but they are not informed of what can happen if they drive and use a cell phone. The effects of these two are very similar. No one wants to get into a crash from driving drunk, and no one wants to get into a crash from driving and using a cell phone, yet people still continue to do it. National Teen Driver Survey states, while over 90% of teen drivers say they don't drink and drive, 9 out of 10 say they've seen passengers distracting the driver or drivers using cell phones. Drinking and driving rates have gone down since legislation has passed banning drinking and driving. Laws against drinking and driving are in all of the United States. Laws against cell phones and driving are in some of our states. Legislation has been proposed in almost every state, but not all has passed. Handheld cell phones are prohibited in 9 states and Washington, D.C., and all but one of those states are primary enforcement. Primary enforcement is when an officer may cite a driver for the offense without any other traffic offense taking place. No state bans all cell phone use, including handheld and hands-free. However, 30 states and Washington, D.C. ban all cell phone use by novice drivers. A novice driver is a driver who is 16 years of age or 17 with an intermediate license, which is a license of less than 6 months. Text messaging is banned in 34 states and Washington, D.C. 3 of these states are secondary enforcement, with the remaining 31 and Washington, D.C. having primary enforcement. 7 states that do not have a text messaging ban do have one for novice drivers. Although not all states have cell phone or texting laws, many localities have passed their own distracted driving bans. Many factors could distract a driver while on the road. Some the driver can control and some they cannot. One of the most common and important distractions is a cell phone. Drivers can choose to use their cell phones while driving or wait until after. No one is forcing them to pick up the phone right then. As technology has grown from making phone calls to texting, and as it continues to grow, we must remember our safety. Driving is an activity that requires full attention. Using a cell phone compromises that concentration. As cell phones have become more of an issue to driving, more studies are taking place and more laws have been passed. This is a timely issue to be taken care of before more lives are claimed and serious injuries occur. Technology is continuing to grow more and more, but we have to take a step back and realize that technology is not worth our lives. Within the car today, we could have cell phones, iPods, and a GPS. The number of technologically advanced items within a car will continue to grow. However, our safety will depend on our choice. I value my safety and life over the convenience of technology. Most people would say they value their life and safety as well, but now it is time to make our choices reflect that value before it is too late.